Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a final look at the Week 13 NFL slate on Draftkings and Yahoo. We're going to go position by position, quarterback through tight end. We're going to touch on some of the guys that I do like at each position this week. I'm not going to talk about every single player on the slate. Just going to try and hit on the few, two or three guys that I think really stand out. We'll do that quarterback through tight end. But before we do get started with the breakdown, as always, guys, please do hit the like button down below. I do always appreciate the likes. Hit the subscribe button as well. And if you have not yet, check out the sponsor of the video, PrizePicks. PrizePicks, they're more of a player prop based DFS site, so you're basically picking the over or the under on players' projections. They have a ton of stuff posted already for Sunday's main slate of games. They got a ton of player props, passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, receptions, touchdowns. They also have fantasy point projections as well. You can take a look at their entire board. They have stuff up for the primetime games too. So if you want to get some action in on the primetime games, which is something that I really like to do, the Sunday night, Monday night games, you can get some action on those as well. But if you want to sign up for PrizePicks, you want to check them out, sign up, use code NOAH, and they will match your first deposit. They will give you a free bet up to $100 when you do sign up with my code. You can make some picks for Sunday's NFL games. You can also do other sports as well. They have college football, they have college basketball, NBA, obviously. You can mix and match sports as well. PrizePicks is a ton of fun. I've been playing, pretty heavy on PrizePicks lately. Been in a little bit of a slump. I was doing really well for a while. Been in a little bit of a slump lately, but we'll get things going, I'm sure. But if you guys want to sign up for PrizePicks, you want to check them out, sign up, use code NOAH, and they will match your first deposit up to $100. And as always, I do give out some of my favorite picks on PrizePicks each day for Patreon members. So if you want to check out the Patreon, you want to see more additional content that I do have to offer, that is linked down below in the description. You can get access to my updated DFS content for NBA, for NFL, and you can also get access to some of my favorite picks on PrizePicks each day for NBA and for the NFL slates as well. So if you're interested in that, that's also available, linked down in the description. If you can check it out if you want to. But let's start off at the quarterback position. At quarterback this week, I think at this position there's a few guys that I do like quite a bit. I think if I'm paying up this week, Lamar Jackson and Tom Brady are definitely the top pay-up options in my opinion. Lamar, we know at this point what he's going to do on a weekly basis. He's got massive upside. I know he's shown somewhat of a low floor this year, and we've seen a lot of mediocre gains from Lamar, but he's obviously got a massive ceiling. He gives you elite rushing upside. Even against Pittsburgh, on the road against Pittsburgh, this may not be the best spot, I would say, for Lamar, but he's just so talented that I think he's still one of the best pay-up options on the slate. I think Tom Brady is a really good play as well. Tom Brady gets a great spot against Atlanta. This game right now does have the highest total on the slate, 50.5 total. So I think Tom Brady, 7,200. Between him and Lamar, I think I'd give the slight edge to Brady, especially just because of how good the matchup is for Brady. This is a game that I think does have some shootout potential if Atlanta, can put up points, keep this game close. We know the Bucs are probably, I don't know exactly, but they're probably one of the most pass-heavy teams in the league. They throw the ball a ton, even in games where Brady's, playing with the lead. He'll still drop back 35, 40 times. So I really like Tom Brady here. I think it's 7,200. He looks like one of the better pay-up options at quarterback. Between him and Lamar, I give a slight edge to Brady, but I think Lamar is a really good play as well. And then in the mid-range, there's some guys I do like in tournaments that I'll definitely have in my tournament player pool, like Justin Herbert. It's 6,700, someone I always have interest in tournaments. He will definitely be in my tournament player pool this week. Russell Wilson, he's been really, really bad, but I think it's 6,400 at home against the 49ers. If nobody's going to play Russell Wilson this week, and right now he's not really projected for any ownership. His ownership, let me see, I think pretty sure it's in like the single digits last time I looked. Yeah, Russell Wilson's projected for 2% ownership. I mean, I know he's been really bad lately, but 2% ownership on Russell Wilson at only 6,400. Like, this is a guy that we were paying over $7K for at the beginning of the year. Is he still the same player that he used to be? I don't know, but I think Russell Wilson still has upside. He still has good weapons with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. If you want to stack Russell Wilson in tournaments, you know where to go. Usually when Russell Wilson has a big game, it's also going to mean that DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett has a big game too. I definitely like stacking those guys up in tournaments. There's some good plays on the San Francisco side that you can run it back with that we're going to talk about later. Eli Mitchell, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, those guys I like quite a bit. So really like Russell Wilson in tournaments. I think he's probably going to be, a guy that I take a big stand on, and I'm going to be really overweight on him in my tournament lineup. So he's a strong play at 6,400. And then value-wise, there's not too much value at quarterback this week. I think if you are going cheap, Matt Ryan at home against Tampa Bay, this is a spot where you expect Atlanta to probably be trailing. The way you beat Tampa Bay is through the air. Teams are not able to run on Tampa Bay. They're one of the toughest teams to run on. This could be one of those games where Matt Ryan throws the ball 35, 40 times, if I'm going to have a lot of exposure to the Tampa Bay side, might as well get some exposure to Atlanta, maybe stack up Matt Ryan and Kyle Pitts, run it back with a guy like Chris Godwin, run it back with a guy like Leonard Fournette, who's coming off a massive week. I think Matt Ryan will probably be in my tournament player pool. And I think Taylor Heinicke looks like a pretty good value as well. Right now, Antonio Gibson's looking like one of the most popular plays on the slate. Antonio Gibson, I think, is a really good play this week. He's going to get a lot of ownership. If you want to get some leverage off of that Antonio Gibson chalk, you can stack up Taylor Heinicke and Terry McLaurin. And, in a scenario where maybe Antonio Gibson doesn't do well, maybe Antonio Gibson doesn't score any touchdowns, it's possible that McLaurin and Heinicke, those guys are connecting for touchdowns. It's possible that Taylor Heinicke throws 3-4 touchdowns this week, which obviously means if that happens, that means Antonio Gibson's probably not getting any touchdowns. So I think Taylor Heinicke as a lower owned play probably makes some sense. Right now his ownership, it's a little bit higher than I thought it would be. He is kind of the most popular value quarterback. He's not getting a ton of ownership, just 10%, but that is the most out of all the quarterbacks below 6K. I still think, even if he's 10% owned, he'll still be in my tournament player pool. I don't know if he'll be that popular, but at 5,600, I definitely like Taylor Heinicke. I think he is a pretty good value at the quarterback position this week, even though, there really isn't much value. That's kind of what I'm looking at quarterback. Not the best position this week. I think for the most part, Lamar, Brady, Herbert, Russell Wilson, value-wise, Matt Ryan, Heinicke, those are the kind of guys I'm looking to. I'll probably have a few more guys in my player pool. When I do play 150 lineups, I usually have about 7 to 10 quarterbacks in my pool. But those guys that we mentioned will definitely all be in there. We can move on to running back, though. Running back, this week, man, it is absolutely loaded. So at the top, you got Jonathan Taylor for 9,200. Great spot for Jonathan Taylor here against the Texans. I think JT is a really good play this week. He's expensive, but if you can find a way to fit him in, he's obviously one of the best plays on the slate. I will say that on Yahoo, it's a little bit easier to pay up for JT just because their pricing is a little bit softer. I think JT at $41 looks like a great play on Yahoo. And I forgot to go over quarterback. I do want to mention Russell Wilson on Yahoo. So we talked about Russell Wilson as being a really good low-owned play on DraftKings. I don't think anyone is going to play him on DK. On Yahoo, maybe he gets a little bit of ownership because he is really cheap on Yahoo. He's actually cheaper than Taylor Heinicke. I feel like if Russell Wilson was the same price tag as Taylor Heinicke on DK, everyone would be playing Russell Wilson this week. So maybe he gets some ownership on Yahoo, but $25 for Russell Wilson, yeah, give me that on Yahoo. I think he's a really good value play at the quarterback position. Yahoo's, again, a site where, for the most part, the pricing's pretty soft. There's a lot of guys on Yahoo that are underpriced. So, specifically Russell Wilson being one of the cheap quarterbacks I like. That's why, we can go cheap at quarterback so we can pay up for JT, who's in a great spot this week against the Texans. JT's just been getting massive volume. I mean, great matchup. I think he just killed the Texans early this year. 145 yards, 2 touchdowns, 31 DK points. Yeah, if you can play Jonathan Taylor, by all means, feel free to just jam him in. But there's a lot of other good plays, too. You got Austin Eckler against the Bengals. You got Joe Mixon in a great spot at home against the Chargers. The Chargers have been one of the worst teams defensively against the run this season. Pretty sure they've allowed the most rushing yards to running backs. I think those guys are good tournament plays. You got Alexander Mattison taking over as the number 1 back from Minnesota. I expect Alexander Mattison to just get as much opportunity as he possibly can handle. I think without Dalvin Cook, they don't really have anyone else behind Mattison that you expect to really take touches away from him. I think he's going to play 80 to 90% of the snaps, probably get 25, close to 30 touches. I mean, we saw early this year when Dalvin Cook was out, it was the same matchup against Detroit, and Alexander Mattison got 25 carries for 113 yards, also had 7 catches for 40 yards, 30 DraftKings points. He's always been great whenever Cook's out. He's priced up, but I think the matchup's really good against Detroit. The opportunity, the volume's going to be there. Alexander Mattison, I do like a lot in the 7K range. And then getting down to the 6K, 5K range, this is where we have a lot of really good standout plays. So Eli Mitchell at 6K, just getting a ton of opportunity lately. 27 carries against the Rams. Last week against Minnesota, got 27 carries as well. And he also got some good usage in the passing game too. Now, this is something that has kind of fluctuated throughout the season. We saw him get good pass game usage against Arizona, and then the week after that, he didn't get a single target. But then last week against Minnesota, he got 6 targets. They've been using him as a true workhorse running back. I want to say that he played on a ton of snaps last week, if I do remember. So Eli Mitchell, let's see. I should have pulled his snaps up before I started recording. So he played on 70% of the snaps last week. He's going to be used as a workhorse. I think without Deebo Samuel, his pass game usage should be even more secure. I think it is pretty likely he does get 4, 5, 6 targets. And we've seen them these last few weeks use Deebo Samuel as a running back. They've been giving Deebo Samuel a lot of carries. Now that Deebo Samuel's out, you just feel even better about Eli Mitchell getting all the opportunity. I like him a lot at 6K. I think Antonio Gibson, as we talked about, with J.D. McKissic out, there was reports that like Antonio Gibson still wouldn't be used a ton in the passing game. Like they had, I think it was Jarrett Patterson and someone else, Wendell Smallwood. I think they did call it from the practice squad. Supposedly they're going to use those guys on third downs, but I don't know if I really buy that. I mean, last week Antonio Gibson in that Monday night game against Seattle, he got 7 targets, 7 catches. He's been, lately he's been used as like a true workhorse. He's been getting a ton of opportunity, 26, 19, and 36 touches the last 3 games. Now that J.D. McKissic is out, it's a possibility we see Antonio Gibson like on a true third down role. Like he plays every single snap. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they still are going to involve Patterson and maybe Smallwood a little bit, but the workload should be very secure for Antonio Gibson. At 5,700, he is definitely underpriced. Obviously, since they played on Monday night, DraftKings really didn't adjust the pricing for McKissic being out. I think, in a normal scenario, if they known McKissic was out, I think Gibson would be like closer to 7K. We are getting a really big discount on him. He's going to be really chalky, but this is one of those guys I think, in tournaments, I'm still probably going to have a lot of exposure to him. I think at 5,700, he's for sure a really strong play on DraftKings. And I definitely like Gibson a lot on Yahoo. He's $21 over there, but if you do look at the Yahoo pricing, Alexander Madison's only $18. As we talked about, the pricing on Yahoo is really soft. Alexander Madison at $18, I mean, that's just a stone cold lock for me. In my 150 lineups on Yahoo, there's a good possibility that I'll have Alexander Madison in 70 to 80% of my lineups. I mean, I might even just lock him into all 150. He's just way too cheap on Yahoo. He should be like the same price tag as Joe Mixon. He should be $30, $35. The fact that he's $18 on Yahoo is just stupid. So love Madison over there. We talked about him as a really good play on DK as well. And then the other guy I do like a lot at running back is Jamal Williams. 5,400 for Jamal Williams. He's expected to take over as the lead back this week with DeAndre Swift out. We haven't seen this scenario so far this year. We haven't seen DeAndre Swift miss a game, so we don't really know how they're going to use Jamal Williams. But last week after Swift got injured, they did involve Jamal Williams a lot. He got 20 touches, 15 carries for 65 yards, also had 5 catches for 18 yards. At home here against Minnesota, this is a spot where I think the Lions can play well enough to where they put up, enough points to where Jamal Williams can have a good game. Now, anytime you're rostering a player on the Lions and they're going to be chalky, like there's always a little bit of risk. There's no guarantee that Jamal Williams does well this week just because the Lions are so bad and they could literally put up 10 points and nobody would be surprised. But I think Jamal Williams is going to get a lot of opportunity. He's shown in the past that when he does get touches, he can be very productive. He's a good pass catcher. He should be used a lot in the passing game. I don't know if he directly takes over the DeAndre Swift role, but I think 18 to 20 touches is pretty likely. If they get down to the goal line, I have to assume that Jamal Williams is going to be the guy punching it in. 5,400 is too cheap for Jamal Williams. He's another guy that's projecting out pretty popular. He's going to be chalky, but he's just one of the best value plays this week, in my opinion. I like him a lot on DK, and he's really cheap on Yahoo. I think he's a really good player over there as well at $16. It is definitely, for me, it's definitely a 3 running back week. I think in my 150 lineups, I'm going to have a lot of lineups with 3 running backs in them just because there's so many good running back plays. The guys we talked about, obviously I really like, and there's some other guys we didn't even mention that are, good options. Leonard Fournette against the Falcons, really like that. You got Saquon, who's only 6,300. He's going to probably be really low owned. Daryl Henderson is questionable, so keep an eye on this. Sony Michel would definitely be a standout value play at 4,300 if we do get word that Daryl Henderson is out. Sony Michel, so far this year with the Rams, hasn't really been involved that much. He's just kind of been the backup to Henderson, but obviously he would take over as the lead back. If Henderson were to be out, the matchup's fantastic at home against the Jaguars, so definitely keep an eye on that Henderson news. We could even get more good, we could even get a better play at running back, like a really good value. If Henderson were to be out, Sony Michel would be a strong play too. But like you got James Conner at 5,900. Like James Conner's been used as a true workhorse lately with Chase Edmonds out. 26 touches last week for James Conner. Possibly could get back Kyler Murray this week, so maybe the Cardinals offense, they're going to be even more efficient, put up even more points than they normally would. Even with Colt McCoy at quarterback these last few weeks, we've still seen James Conner do really well. The Bears, on the road against the Bears, is not a spot you would think would be that great, but the Bears defense hasn't been nearly as good this week. I think James Conner, 5,900, another guy you could go to at running back. So a lot of good running back plays this week. Definitely going to have a lot of 3 running back lineups, I would assume. But yeah, we can move on to wide receiver now, talk about the wide receiver position. So at the top of the wide receiver position, Cooper Kupp at 9K. Look, great play this week. You can't pay up for everyone. I think if I'm paying up for someone, I would rather play Jonathan Taylor over Cooper Kupp if I just had to decide between one of those two guys. But I think Cooper Kupp is definitely a good pay-up option. Other receivers, though, like Keenan Allen, just continues to get a ton of volume. I like him quite a bit. We talked about how you can stack up Taylor Heineke and Terry McLaurin as a way to, leverage off of Antonio Gibson. I will definitely have some Taylor Heineke, Terry McLaurin stacks this week for sure. Some other receivers, though, Chris Godwin, really like him in the mid-range, 6,600. Chris Godwin had a terrible week last week, 4 catches, 24 yards, 5 Draftkings points. I hope that keeps his ownership down this week because I think Chris Godwin is a great play. The matchup against the Falcons, fantastic. We already talked about how Tom Brady is one of my favorite quarterbacks. I'm for sure going to be stacking him up with Chris Godwin. That was the stack that I had a lot of exposure to last week, and obviously it didn't really go well. I'm fine going right back to it. We know the opportunity, the volume is going to be there for Chris Godwin. We know how much of a pass-heavy offense this Buccaneers team is. Tom Brady's going to throw the ball 30 to 40 times probably in this game, and if Atlanta can keep it close and they can put up points, it's a possibility that we see Brady throw the ball 40, 45 times. So love Chris Godwin. I think Mike Evans is a good tournament play too. I would prefer Godwin, but I think Evans is in play, and then obviously we'll talk about Gronk when we get to tight end. I like Gronk quite a bit too. But then you got like the Seattle receivers who I will definitely have exposure to in tournaments. As we mentioned, Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf stacks, Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett stacks. I'm going to be overweight on them in tournaments. I don't think Seattle's offense as a whole is going to get any ownership this week. So, yeah, definitely going to be stacking up Seattle as a way to get a little bit different in tournaments. Jalen Waddle just continues to crush every week. Now, we could see Devontae Parker return this week. He has a chance to return from IR. That might hurt Waddle a little bit, but man, Waddle's just been getting so many targets, been so productive, shown a lot of upside. Matchup against the Giants, I'm not too worried about. I think Jalen Waddle's another guy that I'll have in my player pool this week. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, if he plays, like there's a chance him and Kyler Murray could both play this week. DeAndre Hopkins, it's 3 or 4 weeks now that he hasn't played. We don't really know exactly if he's going to be on some sort of limit, if there's going to be a pitch count. We don't really know if he's 100%, but man, 6,200 for DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know why he's this cheap. I guess I get it because he's returning from injury, and we don't really know what his workload's going to be. But if DeAndre Hopkins is full go, I mean, 6,200 is way too cheap for DeAndre Hopkins, especially if he's going to be good, 100% good to go. I would definitely have him in my tournament player pool because I don't think he gets much ownership either, especially, if there's no word about any sort of pitch count. I think people are going to be scared to go there. So I definitely like Hopkins as a tournament play. Some other guys like T. Higgins finally did really well last week. I've been playing T. Higgins a lot this season. He's been really cheap. Last week, he was low owned, and he finally went off. Price tags went up a little bit, but I still think, T. Higgins, really all these Bengals pass catchers, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, even Tyler Boyd, they're all in play for tournaments. They're all guys you could use as in stacks with Joe Burrow. But T. Higgins probably would be my favorite just given the price point, 5,800. Other receivers, I mean, Brandon Ayuk at 5,600 I think is a really good standout option. We already mentioned how Deebo Samuel is out this week. I think Brandon Ayuk is going to step in as the number one wide receiver. He was in the doghouse for a lot, for a lot of weeks. Early on in the season, we saw him really not playing much. His snaps were being limited. He really wasn't getting targeted. That hasn't been the case these last few weeks. He's gotten at least 6 targets in 4 of his last 5 games. He's been heavily involved. He's been playing a ton of snaps, and now without Deebo Samuel, you expect the target share for Brandon Ayuk to be even higher. I think, it's always a worry with San Francisco because they do run the ball so much. They're just such a run-heavy team. But if Jimmy Garoppolo is forced to drop back here, if Seattle can get up early, force Jimmy G to throw the ball, there's a lot of upside for Brandon Ayuk. And at 5,600, I like him a lot in the mid-range as well. I think he's a really strong play this week. I think you can definitely play him on Yahoo too. He looks like a pretty good play there, $18. But I do want to talk about Chris Godwin. Forgot to mention him on Yahoo, $26 for Chris Godwin. Yeah, really like him over there. I think he's a strong play on Yahoo too. We already discussed how much I like him. But some other receivers, outside of Ayuk in this 5K range, I kind of like these Rams guys in tournaments like Odell Beckham, Van Jefferson. I was pretty overweight on both those guys in tournaments last week. I think they're going to be pretty low owned once again. So, they're guys you can definitely go to in tournaments. Without Robert Woods, there's going to be opportunity for both OBJ and Van Jefferson. They both got into the end zone last week. If Matthew Stafford, if he throws 3-4 touchdowns, it's pretty likely that Odell or Jefferson, one of those guys is catching at least 1 or 2. Obviously, Cooper Kupp's probably going to get in the end zone once or twice in that scenario. But, Van Jefferson right now, he's their wide receiver 2. Odell's their wide receiver 3. They're involving these guys a lot. Last week, Van Jefferson got 9 targets. I know he had a 79-yard touchdown, kind of lucky, but still 9 targets for Van Jefferson. Odell got 10 targets. These guys are getting opportunity. They're not going to be owned. Yeah, I definitely like them as a tournament options. But value-wise at wide receiver, man, there really isn't much value at wide receiver that I'm really that interested in. And looking at the projections this week, there's not a ton of cheap guys that are projecting that well. I will say that Devontae Parker, he is really cheap, 3,900. There is a chance that he does return from IR this week. When Devontae Parker has been on the field and been healthy this year, he's been a guy that's gotten a lot of targets. I mean, every game that he's played in this season, it's only been 5 games, but he has gotten at least 7 targets in all 5 games he's played in this year. 3,900, if he's full go, if he plays and he's good to go, I mean, we probably get like 6-8 targets for Devontae Parker. He should step in as the wide receiver 2 behind Jalen Waddle. He's only 3,900. Yeah, I think if I am going cheap at wide receiver, Devontae Parker will definitely be in my player pool. Do have some interest in him. And outside of Devontae Parker, Laviska Shenault, I think is playable. Josh Reynolds is getting a little bit of ownership. I don't really like that much, but 3,400, he's super cheap. He's been getting targets. He had a pretty good game on Thanksgiving. If you want to go to Josh Reynolds as a punt option, I think it's fine, but probably not someone I'll have a ton of exposure to. Overall, man, wide receiver value this week is pretty thin. There's not a lot of cheap options that stand out. I think like Laviska, Devontae Parker, these are probably the guys I'm looking to for cheap if I am going, below 5K. But I think the 5 to 7K range at wide receiver, that's where we have a lot of options that we talked about, a little while ago. But I think we can go ahead and move on to tight end now. Just kind of quickly go over the tight end position before we do end the video. So tight end this week, no Travis Kelce, Darren Waller not expected to play, so a little bit thin, but we still do have guys like Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, and I think these are some of the best options at the tight end position. Tight end's been a position this year where, God, it's so bad. Sometimes you'll see the highest scoring tight end might only score 15, 18 Draftkings points. Just we haven't seen much of a ceiling from a lot of tight ends this year. Really, Travis Kelce. We've seen some ceiling games from Mark Andrews and Kittle, but some of these guys have been really inconsistent. We've seen still a low floor from Andrews. He's had a lot of single-digit games this year, but I think he is one of the better pay-up options at tight end, even in a tougher spot against the Steelers. I definitely have interest in Mark Andrews. George Kittle, I think at 5,900. Look, I'm still tilted about last week. I had 30 to 40%. I think I had 40% George Kittle in my tournament lineups. In my 150, I was way overweight the field, and he literally had 1 catch for 13 yards. Super annoying. Could have had a huge week last week if I could have got some points from George Kittle. But I like going back to him this week, especially with Deebo Samuel out. We know the 49ers, they don't throw the ball much, but when they do throw it, I think especially without Deebo, Jimmy G is going to be throwing the ball to Brandon Ayuk and to George Kittle. I think those are going to be the guys you expect to get all the targets. For 5,900, I like George Kittle quite a bit. He's one of my favorite tight ends once again. I think Kyle Pitts at 5,600 looks, pretty solid as well, especially, if you're stacking up Brady and Godwin. I think Pitts makes a lot of sense as a run back in those stacks. Gronk, 5,300. Gronk was really, really cheap last week. He was one of my favorite values at the tight end position. His price has gone up a little bit, but Gronk's just getting all the opportunity. I was a little hesitant on Gronk this year just because I thought his upside was not really that high. I thought he was kind of touchdown dependent, but he's been running deeper routes, down the field. He's been getting a lot of targets. He had his first game over 100 yards last week. If Gronk's going to continue to get 8, 9, 10 targets a week, if they're going to continue to, run him more down the field, we know they're going to use him a ton in the red zone. Yeah, 5,300, I definitely like Gronk, especially if you're stacking, or playing Brady. You want to stack him up with somebody, you could definitely stack him up with Gronk. You could even double stack him, with Gronk and Godwin, which I think is totally fine. But value-wise at tight end, Dallas Goedert, someone I've had in my tight end player pool all year. We really haven't seen a bunch of good games from Dallas Goedert, but he's getting a ton of opportunity. He's going to be on the field for a ton of snaps. We know that the Eagles don't really throw the ball much, but I think when Jalen Hurts does throw it, he's going to be looking for Dallas Goedert, quite often. If Hurts throws the ball 30 times here, it's pretty likely that Goddard gets 7, 8 targets. So at 4,500 against the Jets, yeah, I think Dallas Goedert's in play for as a value tight end. I think Pat Freiermuth with Eric Ebron still out, he should continue to play a ton of snaps for 4,200. I kind of like him. Logan Thomas at 4K, I think is viable too. Returned from IR last week, I think he only played on, he didn't play a ton of snaps if I remember correctly. So far this year when Logan Thomas has been healthy, he's been like an every down tight end. Last week, he didn't play as many snaps as he was at the beginning of the year. Weeks 1 through 3, he played on every single snap. Last week against the Seahawks, first game back from IR, he still played on 79% of the snaps though. And I think this week he probably plays on more snaps. He's only 4K. I think Logan Thomas is a pretty solid value tight end. And then if you're really going cheap, he's getting a lot of ownership right now. He's projecting out really well. But Foster Moreau, 2,700, replacing Darren Waller, he's probably gonna look like one of the best values at the tight end position. And with how bad tight end has been this year, if you can find cheap guys that give you some upside, that's usually the best way to go. Just because of tight end's normally a position where it's unlikely that if you fade someone, it's gonna hurt you. Obviously, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, those guys have upside, but we've also seen a pretty low floor from all those guys. It would not be surprising if Andrews, Kittle, Pitts, like if they all combine for less than 10 DK points, or if they all put up less than 10 DK points, because we've seen a low floor from all those tight ends. So if you really want to go cheap, if you want to pay down at the position, I mean, Foster Moreau for 2,700, yeah, he looks like a really good value. Week 7 against Philly, when Darren Waller was out, we did see Foster Moreau get 6 catches for 60 yards, had a touchdown, scored 18 Draftkings points. Pretty sure that week he did play. Yeah, he played on every single snap. So if he played on 100% of the snaps week 7 when Darren Waller was out, I have to assume he's probably going to play on almost every single snap this week. With Darren Waller out once again, he's 2,700. Yeah, I think Foster Moreau as a value tight end makes a lot of sense. He's going to be chalky. Probably someone that you could fade in tournaments, but if you're playing cash games, I mean, Foster Moreau is probably going to be the tight end that you play in cash just because he's projecting out as the best point per dollar play at the tight end position. He's getting a lot of ownership, but hard not to like him with how cheap he is. And we've seen, when he steps in for Darren Waller, he usually, will play a lot. He'll get targets. Hard not to like him at that cheap price point. But I think that's it for tight end this week, guys. And I think that's it for this Week 13 main slate. So I hope you guys did enjoy this little quick, position by position breakdown. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do hit the like button down below. As always, guys, I appreciate the likes. Hit the subscribe button as well if you have not yet. And again, if you would like, check out the sponsor of the video, PrizePicks. Go sign up for PrizePicks. Check out their player props for Sunday's NFL games. You can make some picks for yourself. You have to make at least 2 picks, but you can make up to 5 picks. You can win up to 10 extra money over there on PrizePicks. If you do sign up, use code Noah. They will match your first deposit. They will give you a free bet up to $100 when you do sign up with my code. But I think that's it, guys. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you did enjoy. Best of luck this week, and we will see you in the next video.